Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hash Rate. My guest today is the great and powerful James Altucher. Hello, James.
Power. I've never been called powerful before. Thank you, Mark. It's good, always good to be here. People probably don't know we do these podcasts and hash rates and stuff, but we also talk quite a bit about all things Bittensor, mostly whenever I'm concerned about something and I'm an optimist, but you're even more optimistic than me. So that's a good thing. I can always call you for the optimistic view.
So I'm your bull whisperer, if you will.
Yeah. And everyone else uses me as that because I'm very much an optimist. But every now and then I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I have those moments too. I mean, I got to be honest. I mean, I think it's the way to be a good bull is to be responsible about being a bull.
Yes.
And that means looking at the other side of it and being like, okay, in what ways can this go oh so horribly wrong? And am I not looking at these things, right? So I do that a lot, actually. I don't talk about it a lot, but we'll talk a little bit about some of that stuff on this show today, I think. But I think you have to do that.
You have to do that. And not only that, as we're professional optimists, meaning people know us, we're managing money, we're we have media properties. You do Hash Rate, I do the TAO Pod, I do TAOdaily.com. So we have a responsibility to not just be blindly optimistic, but to constantly question and people are looking to us and there's a responsibility to that. If we were just blindly optimistic and I'm investing from home and nobody knows who I am, okay, I could change my mind. I could do different things. Of course, I could change my mind here too, but it has to be really well thought out and then it has to be communicated. Or if I'm not changing my mind, that has to be communicated as well.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. All right, let's start off with some current events in the Bittensor universe. And I think that the most important current event is the announcement that Ridges has now, I guess, merged with Latent Holdings or has a partnership with them. Whatever it is, they are now functioning as one entity. And as you know, Latent Holdings is headed up by JJ, right? And has on its staff such luminaries, technical luminaries as Voon, right, in the Bittensor space. And Ridges basically, 2 weeks ago said the biggest announcement in their history was coming up in 2 weeks. And I think all of us were more or less expecting a full-blown product release. They are in sort of like a beta product release right now with limited access. And along came this, right? We thought we were going to get a product release. Instead, we got JJ, right?
Yeah.
Which I think sort of threw people off a little bit, right? Initially, anyway.
It threw people off. And I was talking to one of the editors at TAO Daily who frankly was disappointed. But I think people are disappointed for two reasons. And by the way, we're gonna get to the optimistic side of this thing, which was actually elucidated by Const, the founder of TAO or Bittensor. But I think people thought like you thought that okay, maybe they're gonna have some great commercial product announcement. I personally thought when I was just guessing about this, I thought, maybe a seat license with a big Fortune 500 company. That would be amazing because it shows they're competitive, commercially with Claude or Cursor or whatever. So there's a little disappointment from that because obviously that would have been news that would have sent the Ridges subnet token up 300% or whatever. Instead, the token, like you say, is down 40%. So I think people were a little disappointed in that. It's a very much, even if it's good news, which we'll get to, even if it's good news, it's very much a sell the news kind of phenomenon. This is like classic buy the rumor, sell the news. That's exactly what happened. But the other thing is people are critical. Okay, JJ's been involved with a bunch of subnets, and some of them have done okay. Some of them have done okay for JJ. Some of them have not done so well, like Hone has not done so well. TAO Hash did well for a long time, has not done very well in the most recent, TAO Flow type of fallouts. So I think there's some frustration there. By the way, none of that is I don't know that much about Home, but like TAO Hash is neither here nor there. JJ very successfully built a subnet that mined actual Bitcoin. Like that's amazing. So okay, whatever the price is now, it's not JJ's fault. He's doing a million things. He's running a VC firm. He's running Latent Holdings. He's involved in a bunch of subnets. But as Const, Jake Steves points out, again, founder of Bittensor, JJ's a great product guy. He has built, it's not easy to build a subnet, and he's built several. Plus, he's been involved in open source projects for like 20 years and he has a really deep understanding of the philosophical underpinnings behind Bittensor and why Bittensor is going to succeed. He understands the issues of being a subnet owner. When I talked to Shaquille about ridges, one of the things he told me that really kind of opened my eyes is that at least half the job of a subnet owner is defeating people who are attempting to exploit your incentive system. So JJ also implicitly understands this as a subnet owner, and you need subnet owners working on product. You can't just hire a random software guy and say, hey, build a user interface to this subnet, because he's not going to understand the full capabilities of what a subnet can do. Like JJ's and JJ's company, Latent, is not just JJ. It's a bunch of developers who are all experts on subnets and decentralized products and commercializing products, and he's familiar with the entire ecosystem and incentive mechanisms. So JJ really is, I would say maybe, the only other groups that are that sophisticated. There's JJ's group. Maybe there's, General TAO Ventures. Their group is very sophisticated on the development side. I don't know too many. There's Yuma. They're very sophisticated on the development side. There's the guys, behind Data Universe and so on. Will Squires is very sophisticated. So there's not like a million people who are capable of doing what Latent is signing up for. And this is a big responsibility. It's not like Ridges is necessarily paying Latent. From what I could see, it's like an equity sort of deal, but not dilutive to subnet holders, which is, to Shaquille's credit, Shaquille also deeply understands how Bittensor works at a level, by the way, I would say at least 50% of subnet owners don't understand. Like I've speak to subnet owners who really don't understand. Yes, it's important to incentivize miners, but it's also just as important to incentivize subnet token holders. You have to give them a reason to want to hold your subnet tokens, and equity holders. If I own Tesla stock, I'm incentivized to own Tesla stock because maybe I think they'll sell more Teslas next year than this year, and I get a piece of that as an owner, a stockholder of Tesla shares. Subnet token holders don't have the same incentives, and Shaquille, at a very deep level, understands this. He also deeply understands that the only reason he's the best state-of-the-art AI coding software on the planet, better than Cursor, better than Claude, that are valued at tens or hundreds of billions. The only reason he's the best is because he doesn't have employees creating his AI models. He has miners, and miners come from all around the world. It's the best AI talent around the world. They select themselves. It's permissionless. So the only way he gets the best is by having the highest value subnet token. So he understands at a very deep level, if his subnet token does not have value to incentivize token holders to keep holding, he will no longer be the best state-of-the-art software for AI coding. He understands this. He successfully keeps at this. He's built amazing incentive mechanisms, and he's still working on this. So all of these guys know what they're doing. We have the best collection of experts in the world now building, commercializing state-of-the-art software for AI coding. That's going to be successful. I just think it's not what people wanted, and people are incorrectly, I think a little too incorrectly, judgmental on JJ's recent successes or failures. I mean, we all have recent successes and failures. So I think this is a long-term story, and it's still being told, but I think this was a good decision. I agree with Jake, the founder of Bittensor, on this.
Yeah, JJ is a seasoned operator, and I think one of the things that gets lost here is that we have a lot of people who are really great at back-end stuff, especially in Bittensor, but also in all of crypto, right? And where typically they fall down is on the front end, productization, the user interface, and the marketing, right? And I think that gets lost off. That's very difficult to do right? So I think the major risk to Bittensor subnets is that they fail to productize, and by that I mean, even though Ridges has the world's best back end, it may not be competitive on the front end in terms of how nice it is to use for the engineers that are used to things like Cursor and Claude, right? Like, not only does it have to succeed on the back end, but it has to succeed on the front end and being at least on par with these other products, right? You can't forget about the user interface in the front end. And then even when you complete that piece of it, you have to market to these people and explain to them why Ridges is better and why they should even try it. And then when they try it, they'll try it once. And if it's not up to the snuff, they're going to leave and they'll never come back because the news is full of Cursor and Claude and Anthropic and Claudebot and all this other hoopla going on. And I think the other point in my mind is that, Ridges is doing something extraordinarily difficult. Not only are they trying to create a highly complex product, when Bitcoin was born, right, there was no competition. Satoshi invented Bitcoin. There wasn't like a bank somewhere working on a Bitcoin also that competed with regular Bitcoin, right? Same thing with Ethereum, right? Both things were allowed to sort of sneak up on the world with these incredible new projects and get some momentum before anyone noticed them and went, hey, what's that? Right. And it took a long time for that to kind of happen. Ridges is attacking Earth's hottest market segment. Not only that, but the hottest market segment, vibe coding inside the hottest market segment. And every day there's some new crazy advance that comes out in that market segment. That's all over X. This past week, it's Claudebot, right? Claudebot is everywhere. It's in all of our X feeds, right? So even if you have the world's best back end, like the challenge level is 10 million. Right. Like it's unbelievable they're even attempting this. And so and it was a very mature decision, I believe, on Shaq's part to partner. He realized that he needed more help. He needed more firepower to go and attack this extremely complex task that he had set himself to. So I applaud it. I think it's overall a very, very good development.
Yeah, particularly since, again, it is not dilutive to subnet token holders. It preserves 100% of the value of the subnet token. If anything, it adds to the value of the subnet token because now you have more smart minds working on the value of the subnet token and who understand the ecosystem. It's only a net positive. But look, we've all spoken. Oh, look, JJ is a friend of mine. We do the TAO pod together. He's an advisor on TAO X, the company the public company that I run and or help run. But look, JJ's, he's erratic. He says things about Barry Silbert, who's one of the greatest evangelists for TAO ever, like probably a better evangelist for TAO than Jake is. Like Barry Silbert's great. And Barry Silbert also is an investor in TAO X. Love the guy. I think JJ stepped way over the line, talking about Barry. And look, I know JJ's backed off that since then. And I've told this to JJ his face, but he's also an incredibly smart genius. If you sit down and talk to that guy, you realize this is a guy who knows what he's talking about. And now we have his brain. When he goes to sleep at night, he's thinking about how to make Ridges a $10 billion success. I am glad for that. But sure, this is a classic sell the news. We were all expecting so much bigger. Instead, we got something that actually was very good, but just not a seed license with Microsoft. And, it is what it is.
We thought we were at the finish line, and we found out we got a couple more laps to go. That's basically it, right? And that's just the realistic assessment. And I think a lot of people don't realize in Bittensor, like you and I have been around the sort of normal startup space that is VC backed, 8-month product cycles, sales and marketing, right? That it's like a very comprehensive, holistic thing, right? To make a company, make a startup work. And a lot of people in crypto, and usually it's private, like while it's in the gestation and embryonic phase, right? You do that in a warehouse somewhere. Nobody's messing with you other than your board, maybe, and your VCs, but that's it. But in Bittensor, your subnet is fucking with you every day, right? You get people screaming at you in the Discord. It's like you're public on day one, right? Like you're a startup, but you're also a public company, right? Which is like the worst of both worlds. And so you're just in this insane pressure cooker right from day one, which is not the way things are normally done. And in these normal companies, right, if you listen to Mark Andreessen speak, and you and I know this, like each one of these things is a sausage factory. It's ugly what happens inside the building. And there are panics and things go wrong. And then you pivot and then things go wrong again. Then you fire someone, then you hire someone, then things go really right. And then you get over your skis and then things go really wrong, right? That whole process now happens in public, right? And that is sort of abnormal, right? So I think the effect of that dynamic on the embryonic startup is not good. And in fact, is a new sort of hurdle that we have to overcome. The capital formation that it provides is exceedingly good. So there is a good side to it, but it is sort of a new dynamic that we didn't used to have to deal with in the old world, right?
Well, and you brought up a very good point in the very beginning, which is that, and I'll summarize it a different way. Crypto has an interface problem, and subnets doubly so, because we're dealing with two layers of crypto. And what we mean by that, what you mean by that, and what I mean by that right now is that, okay, here's Ridges. We hear the news every day. They're better than Cursor. They're better than Claude on all the tests. Okay, how do I use it? Where can I sit down and type in, give me a dating site for left-handed people? Boom, the website's made. Well, Cursor and Claude, you could do that, but like Ridges, I don't know how to do that. There's an interface issue. They have to make a great interface. And by the way, this is true for Ridges, but it's also true for Ethereum. It's hard to set up a programming environment for Ethereum, which is, by the way, the easiest crypto to use to make projects. So crypto in general has an interface problem. By the way, the internet had an interface problem for the first 30 years of the internet. So started in 1971, 1991, you have Tim Berners-Lee with the web. By the way, the web was not easy. You needed to install a web server. You needed to learn, HTML, Perl, or C, however you were going to do your CGI bin programs. The web had an interface problem until there was things like WordPress and starting from there really in the early 2000s, and then it became easier. Now, of course, it's trivial to make a website. I used to charge $75,000. I was in the website development business. I would charge $75,000 to HBO to make the website for the Dennis Miller Show, which was like 3 pages, because they didn't know how to do it. And now you charge 75 cents for that. Like, it's trivial. So it'll change, and it's getting better. You're involved in Hippias, which is like the subnets that's like Dropbox. And I remember the first time I tried Hippias, and Hippias is great. I love the idea. I was a seed investor of Filecoin. I love the space. I know the Dropbox guys. Hippias, I couldn't just drag and drop a file onto Hippias and use it. I had to convert my cash to TAO first, which is hard. Okay, that's hard for the average user first. And then I had to configure my, it was complicated. They fixed a lot of those problems because, I wrote them a letter. Barry liked my letter. You liked my, all the people, everybody, the Hippias guys responded to me, which, by the way, is the benefits of crypto, is that we're all in this together. The Hippias guys didn't take it as criticism. We're all on the ground floor together. So the Hippias guys made the changes. It's great now. Hippias is fantastic. So, and it's getting better. So in general, this is problems lead to investment results. Like if TAO and Ridges and Hippias and all the other subnets were perfect, then TAO would be at $7,000, $10,000 already. It would be Sami Kassab's base case, which is $4,000 up to his bull case, which is, 10,000 plus. But the fact that there is this interface problem, but it's going to get solved, it's solvable, it's not rocket science, it's solvable. That's why Bittensor is where it is now and why it's a good investment premise now. You have 128 companies, some of them already state-of-the-art companies, but they have relatively easy to solve problems, which is interface issues, marketing issues, and so on. I'm not saying they're trivial problems, but it's not like putting a rocket into space. So that's my rant on that.
Yeah, no, it's a good rant. And I think, I just want to go back to my core point here, especially with Ridges and with all the subnets. Success is messy until you succeed, right? And it doesn't always look like success. And there are many obstacles and many failures along the way, and many arguments and many things that look shaky, right? Uber was like illegal, right? And Uber had competition from Lyft, and Uber ran out of money, right? Like there are all kinds of disasters along the way before they became Uber, right? And that side of it is largely unseen by the public. They only see they IPO'd, right? It must have been a straight line of success to get here, right? And it doesn't look like that at all. And Mark Andreessen again captured it perfectly. All of these things are sausage factories. It's ugly on the inside, right? It's just subnets, you can see the inside for the first time publicly, right? And that's a new dynamic.
One of the early employees of OpenAI was telling me the other day, OpenAI, and I don't know if this was true or not, but this person was an early employee of OpenAI. One of their initial goal to prove that AI is possible is they wanted to make a robotic hand that could solve Rubik's Cube. That was their initial goal. And of course, the chat GPT, let's make something that loads all the text in the world and we can talk to it. That was like an afterthought, and that has 1 billion users now. So you just never know.
You really don't. I mean, I know that you remember Hotmail. So you remember Hotmail, right? So Hotmail, the guy who found it, right? The story I heard was they went into Draper, Fisher, Jurvetson. Well, not Jurvetson yet, because Jurvetson hadn't become a partner yet, because he became a partner
because of Hotmail. Yeah.
So what they pitched him, they had like a pitch about like a Java toolkit. And they went in, and Jurvetson's like, I don't know about this. And then as the guy was walking out the door, he's like, we got this other kind of bullshit idea for like, I don't know, mail, I guess, like, and a website. And Jurvetson's like, wait, that's a great idea. I'd fund that. And that's how it happened, right? They totally didn't think that was the thing that was going to get them a term sheet, but that little sort of, off the cuff idea is what excited Jurvetson. So to his credit, Jurvetson knew what he was looking at, right? So
pretty cool. And it was so interesting. And what did Hotmail solve? It solved the interface problem for SMTP, which was the send mail transfer protocol on top of IP, on top of TCP/IP, which was the internet protocol. So that was the interface. It was the first web front end interface for email. Boom.
Yes. Yeah, which was sort of a crazy thing to think of back then. You didn't, because you were supposed to have Microsoft Outlook on your desktop, and that's like how you connected to email, right? Like that was the standard way, and that was just like, it was a lot of pain, and you had to have an SMTP server, as you said, right? This was just sign up and get an email, which is commonplace now, but that was not commonplace back then. It was a crazy idea, right, in its day. So anyway,
crazy. And here's the thing: 128 subnets on Bittensor. By the way, since we've last spoke on hash rate, they've implemented the whole deregistration thing. So in general, every month, the quality of subnets on Bittensor is going up because the shitty ones go away, new ones get built, and they're eliminated very quickly if they're no good. So you have 128 decent to great potential companies on Bittensor. And some of them already, let's say 5 to 10 of them, are state of the art, meaning they're the best in the world at what they do. And the reason they're the best in the world is because of what Bittensor/TAO offers, which is this decentralized access to the best AI talent or the best programmers on the planet. Like, you don't have to hire someone straight out of Stanford. Maybe some kid in his basement in Uzbekistan is the best AI programmer on the planet. That guy will find his way to your company before he finds his way to OpenAI if you're a Bittensor subnet. And so some of these state-of-the-art companies are going to build a good interface, are going to build a good commercial product, are going to succeed and become multi-billion-dollar valuations. VCs are not going to be able to get access to the equity of those companies, so they're going to have to buy subnet tokens because, by the way, in order for those companies to be the best, they're going to have to create value for their subnet tokens. And any buying, my observing TAO's trading behavior, and I've been observing it now for a long time, buying of subnets is a incredibly bullish thing for TAO. It's much more bullish than simply buying TAO. And I'm not totally sure I understand why. I think the reason why is because when you're staking into subnets, you're essentially buying at market for TAO, so it kind of pushes TAO. I don't know. I'm just that part I'm just making up. I have no idea. But I've noticed that whenever there's a big sudden new interest in staking in subnets, TAO goes up really fast, quite a bit, almost as if there was a market order on TAO. So I'm just connecting the dots and trying to figure it out. Jake or you, probably someone else knows this better than me. But some of these subnets are going to succeed. And I think, Sami Kassab's report, his base case was if even 2 or 3 subnets succeed in this way, then you have a bearish case of TAO being at 4,082 price, which is 20 times higher than it is this moment. And the reason he gets that way is, look, OpenAI has a $500 billion valuation. Any reasonable VC funded AI company has a $10 billion valuation. TAO, Bittensor, which is a collection of 128 AI companies, has a $2.5 billion valuation. It's like Bill Gates' ATM settings is the value of, his cash ATM settings is the value of Bittensor right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's totally crazy how low it is. And yeah, Sami Kasseb's report is really awesome. I really, I read that several times, and it was exceedingly well put together. I don't know if you know, but I did my own report just a couple of weeks ago, which I don't know if you've read yet.
I wanted to ask you about it. So look,
I did a different thing. Yeah, the focus. Sami already did Sami's report, so I wasn't going to do that, right? Like Sami's already made the definitive sort of analytical report. My report addressed two things. One was I wanted to explain Bittensor to a newbie as simply as possible, right? So it's a very the voice is very sort of 1 sentence, 2 sentence paragraphs, very sort of easy to read. As much as I could make it easy to understand, stealing the best metaphors from everybody, and adding a few of my own in there, but just sort of crystallizing it and putting it in one place, right? So that is really the primary goal of the report. The secondary, sort of the second half of it is characterizing the state of the ecosystem, right? Like, what are the wallets like? Can I buy subnets on centralized exchanges? No, you can't, not really. What could change that? What could be a catalyst which sort of lights this thing on fire? Is it similar to the ICO phase of Ethereum, right? Could it be? What would make it similar to the ICO phase of Ethereum? All these sorts of things. That was the focus of the report. So a little bit different, twist on looking at our universe, but I think very complementary.
Yeah, and look, that stuff like that's important. Like, people need to understand the basics. They need to understand what a subnet is. They need to understand what are the best subnets, what are the current subnets out there. Not even what are the best are, what are the current ones out there. And all this stuff is very important.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, let's talk about a couple different things now. So have you heard about this big DAT by DNA Fund? So it's a big announcement this week that DNA, and I've heard different things about this in terms of the numbers. What I've been able to gather, the number, what they're aiming for, and I don't know if they don't have this yet, but what they're aiming for is a $300 million DAT, digital asset treasury company. DNA Fund is behind it, so that's Brock Pierce and Scott Walker and some other folks. Brock and Scott are the two people I know personally. There are obviously other folks involved, probably that are more central to this particular effort. And they have acquired Rizzo's validator business, right? So we all know Rizzo because he's one of the major validators in the Bittensor space and one of the most trusted ones and one of the largest. And also now Vanta. So this is the new information to come out this week. Vanta's Subnet 8, the artist formerly known as Proprietary Trading Network, PTN, is also now part of this DAT. And the idea is if, when you have a DAT, you want to have a real business also. You don't want to just hold coins. And Rizzo's validation business and Vanta's prop trading firm infrastructure business will form the core of the actual revenue generated business of this DAT. Have you heard about this? What have you heard? Does that sort of score up with what you know?
Yeah, that scores up with what I know. I appreciate that they bought these other. Here's the pros and cons. First off, I heard that they're going to be focused on not just buying TAO, but buying subnets, right? They're not interested in being another DAT for TAO because, look, there's me, there's Oblong, there's GTAO, there's XTAO, there's Cefello. Okay. And by the way, I don't have to push my stock or say, buy my stock versus we're all going to go up. If TAO goes up, we're all going to go down if TAO goes down. There's no need to there's no pumping stocks here. Like, it is what it is. And when people say, DATs are over, like MicroStrategy, BitMine, they're all over. No, they're not. If Bitcoin goes up, the DATs for Bitcoin will go up. If Ethereum goes up, the DATs for Bitcoin will go up. If Ethereum goes down, BitMine's going to go down. It's just, it is what, there's no, you can't, that's business. Yeah. But they're differentiating themselves by bringing 300 million into subnets, which, by the way, if you do it right, is going to be much more successful anyway. If you do it wrong, it'll fail faster. But if you do it right, it's going to be more successful. I'm not quite sure they needed to buy businesses. Now, their claim was that they need to buy to be so. A DAT implies eventually they're going to be a public company. I don't think they've announced that they're a public company yet. So a DAT implies.
They have.
Oh, they have.
I'm pretty sure. I don't have it in front of me, but I've seen it. Yeah. I've seen that
Okay,
this is meant to be a public company. So yes.
so
I
yeah,
don't know
I
how
know
they're
it's
doing it. I don't know if they're IPOing or shell company or what, but that,
right.
yes.
So
Sorry, go
no,
ahead.
I know. So that I heard. I know that they're going to be a public company, and been hearing this for 3 or 4 months. I don't know what public company they have. I don't think they found the company yet, or else they would tell us. And you don't really need to be a revenue generating business. The SEC has already decided that okay, you could just be buying cryptos, and that's your business. We're buying cryptos because cryptos are not securities. If you're it's a nuance. It's the 1933 SEC Act versus the 1940 SEC Act. If you're a public company, you can't buy securities unless you fall under a different set of laws within the SEC called the 1940 Act, which are more restrictive. But the SEC has ruled that tokens like Bitcoin, Ethereum, TAO are not securities. So you don't really need a revenue generating business to buy, but they did anyway. The reason why, and look, Frank, he's got one of the best validators. You got a lot of competition in the validator space. If you got Yuma, which is really institutional, and as TAO becomes more institutional, Yuma is gonna dominate that space. But maybe Frank with his validator will rise up to be institutional quality, or already is institutional quality. So he didn't necessarily need that, but it does probably give him some insight into which subnets are performing well, and so that gives him some insider knowledge, which is great. The other great thing about buying a validator, here's the key insight into valuing a DAT, a digital asset treasury. And this is really important, and not a lot of people know this. Let's just look at MicroStrategy, or Strategy as it's called now. They buy Bitcoin. And Semler Scientific, they also buy Bitcoin. Now, I don't know where, all of these DATs are valued. What is the value of the company versus the value of the Bitcoin they own? So if they own $100 worth of Bitcoin, but the value of the company is a $200 market cap, they're trading at 2 to 1. They're trading 2 over the value of the assets that they own. And so normally you don't want to buy something that's worth more than 1 times the assets they own. But MicroStrategy, not now, but like a few months ago when these things were riding high, MicroStrategy was more like 2 to 1, and Semler Scientific was 1 to 1. So why was MicroStrategy 2 to 1 and Semler Scientific 1 to 1? What was the difference between those companies? Well, MicroStrategy was better at increasing the amount of Bitcoin per share it had. So if I had 1 share of MicroStrategy, maybe I started off with X amount of Bitcoin, and then a little later I had X plus 1 amount of Bitcoin. And Michael Saylor would do that by very creative financing deals, by using debt, creatively, and so on. And Semler Scientific was doing nothing, so they were trading more towards 1 times net asset value than 2 times net asset value. Now, what Brock Pierce is doing that's fascinating with his data is he's going to use the validator to increase his tokens per share over time. And that's going to make his DAT trade at 2, 3, 4 times NAV. So I think that's the reason why he's buying the validator. Why do you buy Subnet 8? I think that's a very particular case where, like, Vanta is involved in other fintech subnets, like Subnet 35 Cartage, for instance, which is trying to be the hyperliquid of Bittensor. So this is going to give Brock insight into the financial subnets, which is not something that, for instance, Jake focuses on. He focuses more on the AI ones and doesn't really like, from what I understand, the fintech ones. But the fintech, TAO is actually built perfectly for fintech. Like making Subnet 35 a hyperliquid of TAO is a fascinating approach, because the miners, you can reward the miners with TAO tokens or Subnet tokens if they provide liquidity. Hyperliquid has to find other ways to reward miners to provide liquidity. So it's really fascinating to be involved at that level. I'm just piecing together what I think is all I haven't talked to any of these guys, so I'm just piecing together the reasoning, how I would think about it if I were them. So I think it's very exciting, but I have been hearing about this for 3 or 4 months. I haven't heard of a public company that they have even begun talking with, and usually I do hear about those things. I would be happy to help them if they want to talk to someone about it. I don't know of a public company offhand, but I know how to approach them. And I think it's very interesting. But related to what I earlier said, how I think whenever there's a catalyst for subnets, that tends to be an important catalyst for TAO. This is an incredible catalyst for subnets. So once they announce that they have merged with a public company, give it about 1 week and TAO is going to be up 100 to 200 points. And I'll give you an example. Yeah, I'll give you a very specific example. October, I'm just trying to remember the date, October 29th and 30th. Bitcoin, don't forget, had already had its flash crash in October 10th, as did TAO, as did many other cryptos, and everything fell. Bitcoin was still falling, and it's been falling to this day. And on October 29th, though, something weird happened. Suddenly, TAO jumped from 280 to 24 to 36 hours later. It was 530. Oh my gosh. I was in heaven. I couldn't sleep at night. I was so excited. And it went up so fast. And it was a Saturday night. It was hitting 5:30, like 3 a.m. I was up, like reloading TAO, coin market cap. What's TAO? And the reason I think, and again, this is me just guessing, but is Yuma just announced their fund. They had two index funds for investing in subnets. They had just announced the day before these index funds, and we had just announced TAOX. We had just announced we're investing. I think we put in, I'm forgetting the number. I should know, and off the top of my head, let's say we put like 5 million. I think that was the number. And so suddenly there was an institutional buyer of subnets for the first time, and boom, TAO itself acted as if there was somebody on a rampage buying TAO, like somebody was buying it at the market and wouldn't stop. And I do think
it decoupled from Bitcoin and the rest of crypto completely. Like the rest of crypto was crashing, TAO was spiking. Yeah,
it was the only one in the top 100. And I do think it was related to that news. And the reason I think that is, I'll connect one more dot, and two examples don't represent a mathematical proof. But when GTAO came around, again, a grayscale or DCG product, when GTAO came around, another institutional offering, but not into the subnets, but still an institutional offering, that also seemed to spur a very quick move from TAO, but nothing like what I saw with the announcement of the Yuma subnet funds. So this is just a guess. Maybe they're not, maybe it's just coincidence. They're not correlated at all. But I do think when Frank announces this, DAT actually merges into a public company, because that's when they're going to be allowed to put the money to work. I think we're going to see a big and fast move in TAO, regardless of whatever news is happening in subnets.
Yeah, and just to clarify one thing on this DAT, the Brock Pierce DAT, the DNA fund DAT, I should say, they are specifically aimed at owning subnets, owning and holding subnets for long periods of time. So it is not just like TAO; it's holding subnets. Massively bullish for subnets, in my opinion.
And think about it. Yuma, let's say Yuma's subnet funds, I have no idea what their assets under management are, and I have no idea what they started with. I just know what we invested. But I know we were like a good size investor for them at that time. It was the beginning. We were like the first, I think the Connecticut Teachers Fund might have been the first, and then we were like the second investor. And so it wasn't, and then I'm sure Barry had some money in it. So it wasn't like 300 million, it was like 10 to 20 million. I'm just guessing, complete guess. And that was enough. If there is a correlation, that was enough to send TAO from 280 to 530 in a bear market. So we're still in a bear market, but we're talking 300 million from Brock, from the DNA fund. And he's not going to put it all to work, obviously, in the same day. It's going to be ongoing. But that's going to be a big driver of TAO's price. It's going to be a big driver.
Yeah, totally agree. So let's talk now about another news story, which is pretty interesting. So there's a organization called CrunchDAO, and they're a company, and they have sort of in their ecosystem 11,000 machine learning engineers, 1,200 PhDs in all these people are in 100 countries, and they've basically been sort of a Solana creature. So the headline is that all these brains are going to now be mining Bittensor subnets. So they basically are taking their ecosystem and transplanting some portion of it into the Bittensor universe. And I did speak with the founder, I guess it was this week, about this. And if you go to their site, if you go to CrunchDAO's site, you'll see a bunch of, it's sort of like a Craigslist for machine learning tasks. right? Which is very, very Bittensor, right? Like it's a very Bittensor-y kind of thing already. It just wasn't in Bittensor, it was on Solana, and you get paid in USDC or fiat, right, for solving these AI problems. And these guys went, oh my God, there's this whole universe in Bittensor. We could be making a lot more money, right? But we've got the brains. So all we need to do is take the brains, plug them into this, and we can create, massive amounts of fusion. So they are now in the process of sort of creating a miner portal, right? Because if you want to become a Bittensor miner, if you're an AI engineer and you hear about this Bittensor thing, you hear things like, oh, I can make 50K a day, right? Well, where do I go? How do I figure this out? Like, it's kind of hard to figure out. This is going to be sort of the front door that you go to, and they're going to handhold you as an engineer. You might not even have to worry about the crypto side of it. You don't like crypto, you don't have to F around with it. If you do like crypto, you can get the subnet tokens, but you don't have to. You might be able to get paid in fiat. So I look at this, and I think this is a massively bullish development in terms of the quality of miner and actually the quality of the front door to new miners coming into the Bittensor ecosystem. Did you hear about this, and what do you think about it?
I have not heard about it. I am glad you told me about it because I'm going to research it. This sounds to me like the dream come true, because what we talked about at the beginning of this podcast is that crypto, but also Bittensor, but also third layer down, the miners, they have an interface problem. Like, it's really hard. Every subnet has different rules. Oh, download this, app, download this, here's our rules. Here's the code you start with. It's really hard. And if they kind of help you skip 2/3 of these startup time or costs, that is amazing. And they're the ones kind of collecting the intelligentsia. And look, Solana, okay, Solana's problems are very general, but also Solana is known for now their biggest source of revenues is making meme coins. And so, like Pump.Fun is built on top of Solana, and that's what Solana benefits from. And Bittensor is solving hard problems. So you only really get rewarded if you're a great programmer. And okay, not for all the subnets. For some subnets, it's different. But if these guys these guys don't want to, they're great programmers, it sounds like. They don't want to compete with the guys making meme coins. Those guys aren't great programmers. So here's where they have an edge where they can make the millions a day potentially possible at some point on Bittensor. This is going to be an amazing, exciting platform. I don't know if they're a private company, if they're building as a company. That's something that could, merge into a public company easily. And that strikes me as amazing. So I think, again, whenever you solve this interface problem for crypto, that's what makes your value higher. Why is Ethereum worth more than Solana, for instance? Well, Ethereum's interface for their EVM, for their programming virtual machine, is just better. Their interface is better. Solana benefited. They hired an ex-marketing head of Netflix to be their head of marketing. So they did a marketing job, which is fine. All credit to them. That's how they got their price up. But they're not better technically than Ethereum. Ethereum is better technically than Solana. So Bittensor, because of its philosophy, its ethos, and I respect this, on purpose does not hire a head of marketing. It wants to do this organically, the way the internet did, the way Bitcoin did. I really respect that philosophy. And I've told Jake via email that, try as little as possible to change anything in your philosophy, because everyone's always telling him, change this, change that. And so I think this is genius, because as problems get solved, you should invest. Here's a problem that's getting solved. That's a reason to invest.
Yeah, no, I think that's wise advice, and I agree with you. I think Jake's doing a great job, and I'm definitely a fan. And there've been times where I've been sort of critical of something Jake did, and then later on I figured out actually Jake was right, and I just needed to watch the result of what he had thrown out there. I didn't fully understand it until I could see the effects of it, and then I kind of went, oh, now I know why he did this thing in this what I thought was a weird way. Actually, he did the right thing. So with that in mind.
I'll give you an example. I wanted to ask you for an example of that, but I'll give you an example that you and I have even spoken about in the past. I spoke to a subnet a few weeks ago, and you and I then spoke about it, and he was upset about TAO flow, which is the way in which TAO is staked into the liquidity pools, and how it's changed to be based on who are the long-term stakers versus who's just simply got the highest price. And so subnets got hurt by that. And my view is, how could that have been bad? Because you're placing the bet on the subnets with long-term committed stakers. So that should be better. But this one subnet was complaining to me his TAO emissions were going to zero. He didn't know what to do. And I had talked to this guy several months earlier and said, look, you need to give people incentive to hold your subnet token, or else no one's going to want to stake in your subnet. And now he's feeling the consequences of that. So it works. Like, Jake's, when he does make a big change, it works. I really respect that.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of, I know what you're talking about. I'm thinking much the same thing. So yeah, there were two big changes in the Bittensor universe recently, in the last 3 months or so. One of them was subnet deregistration, which you mentioned earlier. So what that means is if you're at the bottom of the pile, you're the weakest link, you'll get cut. Your subnet will no longer be in your possession. All the positions will be liquidated. It's like it gets repossessed, right? And the chain just does this automatically. The chain is continuously looking to kill the weakest link. And it's running around, boop, boop. People have been getting it in the head and people are complaining, right? Because nobody likes death. But you need death. You need the possibility of death for evolution. Right. And before there was no there was the good side of evolution, the incentive side, but there was no possibility of death. We didn't balance it out with the yang for the yin. Right. Now Jake has. And the other part of death is TAO flow. Right. So to be able to receive these exceptional benefits from the chain, otherwise known as free TAO, right, or free subnet, basically free TAO, free subsidization of your subnet, you must earn it. And the way you earn it is there's the amount of TAO that's coming into your liquidity pool. In other words, buying pressure for your subnet token, demand for your subnet token has to continuously be positive. And if it's not, the spigot gets turned off. You are no longer getting subsidized by the chain. You don't earn you got to sing for your supper every day. And it's what have you done for me lately? It's what you did yesterday doesn't matter. What did you do today? And so, and if you have negative TAO flow for too long, not only do you not get subnet token, not only do you not get subsidization from the chain, but now you become a candidate for deregistration and death, right? So a lot of people screamed about this, right? Because this was new evolutionary pressure. What were your thoughts on this?
No, well, Mark, I wanted to ask you a question too, and I'm going to ask a naive question so people listening will know I'm completely naive about some things on the TAO topics. But you still, even if your emissions are going to zero, you're still getting your emissions to pay your miners, though, right? Or how does that
your miners, they get cut. So yeah, basically, if you have negative TAO flow, then your emissions get cut, right? So basically negative TAO flow, it's zero. So your miners don't get fed, right? So that's a problem.
I see.
Right?
I always thought it was just the TAO going into the liquidity pool.
It is the TAO going into the liquidity pool, right? So your TAO goes into the liquidity pool, and that has to be positive every day. And I'm lying a little bit because there is a moving average. It's over like a 30-day moving. I think it's 30-day moving average period. I've heard two things. I've heard 86 days, but I think it was made into 30 days. So I believe 30 days is correct for the moving average. So there's a little bit of cushion in there, but in general, you have to be growing. And if you're not growing, your miners lose your TAO flow. So it's everybody.
You know what? I was getting a little confused.
Subsidization.
I was getting a little confused with the halving. The miner emissions, the TAO emissions that your liquidity pool got halved with the halving, but not the miner emissions.
Correct. You are thinking of the halving. It's just completely separate from that. So yes. So that means, right, and if your miners get pissed, then you lose your mining pool, right? Because they're like, well, we're not making anything. Why are we working? So you must keep your TAO flow positive or your subnet dies. That's extreme evolutionary pressure, right? And I think a lot of people, I kind of looked at it at first. I was like, wow, that's super harsh. And I was like, I don't know if what is that going to do to things like Shoots and Targon and Liam, where the miners have hard costs, right? And if you're basically suddenly, it's like being a Bitcoin miner, but you don't get any Bitcoin. Why would you do it, right? Like, and that's possible now in the subnet universe. So that's extreme evolutionary pressure.
Yeah, and it's amazing because, I don't know whether Jake is a capitalist, a socialist. I don't know what his political views are. I know, but I know he's very like almost philosophically pure. What he's created with this mechanism, and again, I don't describe this as capitalism. Capitalism itself is a word invented essentially by Karl Marx and his cronies at the time, which is the accumulation of capital by a bunch of people and then at the exploitation of the proletariat is capitalism, which is completely untrue. But it became the word we use to describe our economic system unfairly. Our real economic system is incentivism. Everybody works on incentives. You work at the 7-Eleven because you're paid. You have incentives. You own the 7-Eleven because you're going to have equity. You get paid from that, so you have incentives. Everything is done in our society through incentives. And so what Jake did was he made the software completely equivalent software model of our economic system in a very pure way, which is why I love the purity of it. I almost hate any change unless I'm really sure about it.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And actually, Mark Andreessen had just had an interview. It just came out yesterday. At least I saw it on X for the first time yesterday. And he says the atomic unit of the company is not the employee. The atomic unit of the company is the task. And it sounded like he had, just read up on Bittensor and was sort of regurgitating a lot of, this sort of thinking and this sort of language, right? And it's interesting that we're all sort of coalescing around the same cluster of ideas, even if you're outside the Bittensor ecosystem, right? And so in recent saying that, I reposted it, of course, with the opening of my State of TAO paper, because that's exactly how I start. It's literally exactly how I start off, right? Here's what Andreessen said. Here's how the paper opens, right? They're the same. So very, very interesting. So what do you think with TAO flow and subnet deregistration? Even though I agree with those design principles, I think they're correct. With some adjustments. I mean, we have to sort of turn knobs to sort of fine tune them, but in general, they were good things because they introduced the possibility of death, which I don't think we had before. And I think you need the yang to the yin, as I said earlier. Incentive, death. The chain is extremely generous. The chain is extremely savage at the same time, right? So
the one thing I always want to, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you a question, then please give me that thought. The question is. But basically Const is the game master, right? So Jacob Steves Const, he has a lot of power, right? And he sort of announced this thing and it came out of nowhere. It was implemented within a couple of days. We were like, oh, wow, we live in a unit. This is not like Ethereum, right? Vitalik just doesn't like completely change the chain within a couple of days without like lots of debate. But here in Bittensor world, Jacob Steves, aka Const, can and does. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, even if he makes the right choice? And please give me your other thought as well.
Wow, that is a great question. I mean, look, it's the same question that could be asked about government, okay? We know a hereditary king is not a good idea because even if the initial king who took over the kingdom has the best sense of government and how to organize the kingdom, I don't know if that's ever happened, but his son, why would the son or daughter have that same prescient ability? But then again, when you have a government, a democracy, a government elected by the people, you could have a lot of stupid people some years and you have a bad government. That happens in many countries. And, or do you have like a benevolent dictatorship, which I don't know if it's ever happened in society where you have for a short
Caesar
period of
Augustus.
time.
Caesar Augustus was awesome. Like the guy after Julius Caesar, the first emperor of Rome, Caesar Augustus, fucking awesome. Really great emperor. Then we got like fucking Caligula.
Yeah, the greatest period of peace in Rome's history, but of course started with incredible violence. He killed all his competitors in order to take power.
He did.
But yeah, okay. Then it was an incredible period of wealth, peace. The empire was the biggest it ever was, I think. And what we have now is kind of like an Augustus, and I just don't know the answer. He's making great decisions. He's making better decisions than I would make. Look, I'm one of the largest wallet holders on Bittensor, and it's not like I call him and say, Jake, I hope you do this or that. Like, I never talked to him before at all. I've just sent emails. And I don't know what the answer is. Is there a chance? I think the good thing is he very rarely makes changes. It's not like he's in there playing with the code every day, hitting publish. And so it's like we hear about it when there's a change and there's discussion. And I've seen him like change things around to adjust. So look, it's working now. There's no problem. I think Bittensor is great right now. Look, if I were to consider making a change, and probably this is a bad idea for various reasons, I would say allow there to be more subnets. So yes, keep the deregistration going, but instead of 128 maximum, make it 256. And by the way, the only reason I say that is selfish, because in order to start a subnet, you've got to stake a whole bunch of TAO, and that means there's and then it gets locked up, and that means there's buying pressure on TAO, and the price of TAO goes up. So every time you raise the number of subnets, the price of TAO is going to go up. So, but the flip side of that is you raise the number of subnets, there's more pressure on the system, there's more things that can go wrong, and you got to be very careful or the whole network can go down. So I think the deregistration was actually a solution to the idea of increasing the number of They were going to increase the number of subnets to 256. They stopped that and introduced deregistration instead. I think that was a smarter solution. This is one of those examples where I did not agree for selfish reasons, but he turned out to be correct. And so now I just keep my mouth shut on that.
I'm scared of more subnets because then you turn into Solana and you have pump.fun and then your chain gets killed by just junk, right? You get the noise, because the vibe of the neighborhood goes to shit basically, right? So, you got graffiti everywhere. That's what Solana is now, right? So we want our house to be, we want to have the august halls of, we want to be like the city on a hill. Right. That's what we are right now. And I want to stay there personally. So I'm a little afraid that, if we open the front door, a bunch of garbage will fill up the chain, things like rich kids of TAO. Like, what's that? I don't know, but it sounds bad already.
Wait, what is that? Is that a subnet?
That's a subnet. Yeah. Yeah.
What does that do?
I haven't even looked at it. I haven't even dug into what it is, but it doesn't look good to me. So there's a couple of these still floating around. Yeah.
By the way, this is a whole other you probably explore this anyway in the other hash rates, but there's so many like amazing subnets that have started up recently that I'm so impressed by, like Loosh, which is, kind of decentralized consciousness for robots. It's amazing. It's kind of like Alki. A lot of crypto that's already out there is better done within the Bittensor world. So Alki does what Loosh does, and it's its own crypto, but I think Loosh will do it better as a subnet because of the added liquidity provided by TAO. But here's a question I have for you, a macro question. Bitcoin and Ethereum and the top 100 from number 2 to number 100, they're all core. Everyone always asks me, what's going on with TAO? What's going on with Chainlink? What's going on with Aave? Why is it down? And I'm like, nothing's going on with them. They are doing great. It's all Bitcoin and Ethereum. I wake up in the morning, I don't look at TAO's price, I look at Ethereum's price. Oh, Ethereum went from 2,800 to 2,700. That means TAO probably went from 230 to 215. Like, I'll know exactly where every token is. And didn't this bill just get passed? Or not passed, it got out of the Agricultural Committee in the Senate, and Bitcoin immediately crashed. And by the way, then Trump appoints a Fed chairman, Bitcoin goes down. It seems like these are two events that would have made Bitcoin and Ethereum go up. Now, again, it could be buy the rumor, sell the news. I don't know. I feel at some point rational behavior will return. You just have to be patient, and Bitcoin goes up. But what do you think is going on macro in the Bitcoin world right now? Because again, if you want to know about the price of TAO, it's all Ethereum and Bitcoin right now.
Yeah, I think we're in a period of irrational inexuberance. And it will just continue until it doesn't. And I think a lot of what's driving it, I think there's a lot of chaos in the world, right? And I think that's I think that the olds are still in charge of most of the money. Like the last sort of generation, they're still controlling the Jamie Dimons of the world. Most of the money in the world is controlled by the olds, which regard gold and silver and things of like that as the safe store of value. And so, over the last, month and a half or so, we've seen everyone run into metals, right? Like not today. Today, it seems like it's crashing, but the chaos has caused a flood of people to move into metals, which, brings up the story of like, well, what happened with Bitcoin? How come it didn't work? How come it didn't happen with Bitcoin, right? Because the olds don't believe in Bitcoin. They believe in the old things, right? They just haven't internalized that this is a better store of value yet. So I think they will. I think the market will properly value Bitcoin, but it just, the sort of the chain, the whip is cracked, but we're sort of like at this part and it hasn't reached that part of the whip yet. And I think it's coming. And I think when it comes, it'll come with a vengeance. And I think it'll come this year, but we're just not there yet.
I 100% agree. I was just curious if there was something I was missing, but look, we've seen this happen before. And it's John Maynard Keynes said, or back in the day, the market could stay, irrational longer than you can stay solvent. So people need to be careful and not invest more than they can lose, obviously. But that's clearly what's happening is that, we're in this risk off period where everyone, like all these old people love gold. And so gold is just a rock. And by the way, it inflates 1.5% a year, whereas Bitcoin inflates 0% a year. We don't really know the supply of gold in the world. We know the supply of Bitcoin. So yeah. It makes total sense for all these things to trigger Bitcoin going up. It's just, again, it's irrational. And I agree with you. And look, and for people who are wondering about TAO, listen to podcasts like Hash Rate. You're going to know why you should invest in TAO. Don't just look at the price of TAO because that's the price today. It's not the price tomorrow. So what we're talking about here is for me, look, I'm every day wanting to be bullish, else I won't be. And for me, what Mark and I have been talking about here today, what you and I have been talking about are the reasons long term, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years out, we're aiming for TAO 10,000, and nothing's going to stop that. A catalyst will be, though, we do need a catalyst, which is a subnet breaking out into a successful company. But guess what? All these companies are 1 year old, and it takes companies. It took NVIDIA 20 years before it became NVIDIA. So everybody just has to relax a little bit, including me. I'm the one who's like acting like so yeah. The network itself is in really great shape, and it's exciting to see all the things that are happening on the network.
Yeah, overall, I'm massively bullish, but none of that has changed. It's just, look, it's a meat grinder on the inside, but it always is. And success looks like this. It looks like what we're seeing right now in the early days. So I'm still very bullish. All right, James. Right. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Always a massive pleasure to have you on the show. So thank you for taking some time.
Thanks for inviting me.
And my name is Mark Jeffrey. This has been Hash Rate. We'll see you all next time.